Can we start? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Anytime.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody's tummy's nice and full. Is everybody's oortjies nie toe nie? My Afrikaans is nie baie goed nie, maar ek probeer.
That's good. I guess it's an Afrikaans audience here.
Nee.
I'm not going to speak Afrikaans.
Namibians, are you not speaking Afrikaans? Julle praat Afrikaans. Oh, julle praat Afrikaans. I'm such a Durban girl, sorry. Namibianas. Well, welcome back. I hope you had a really nice lunch. We've got Dr. Jacques Ludik with us. We are very privileged to have him. Thank you very much for joining us. And I am promised that he's going to keep us all awake and alive and energized for the next 45 minutes. 40 minutes.
Sounds good. And we can keep it also very interactive as well. I do have quite a bit of slides to share, but if there's questions, please feel free, raise your hand.
Raise your hand. I'm happy to bring the mic. I'll sit where I can see and get the mic to you.
Yeah.
Okay, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gillian. Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. So the purpose of this particular talk is on operationalizing AI, and I'm saying within the smart technology era. But basically what we're trying to do is to help businesses thrive. Not only survive, but thrive in the smart technology era. Okay, so I just want to get a sense of the industries represented here. So from who's in financial services? Wow. Sorry, this is a finance conference. I was actually in another AI conference this morning where I did a keynote, and same question. So who's in other industries besides financial services? Yes. What industry?
In other industry.
Okay, cool. Consulting.
But mostly financial services, come on, Mercedes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So so actually the use cases that I've got here that we can talk through is pretty much finance, and it covers the whole spectrum of if you think about financial services, from investment to insurance, short-term life insurance, all of that. So I do have some nice examples and things that we can discuss as well. So what I would like to do, let's go to the agenda. This is the agenda that I've got. So I always kind of set the scene. I think it's important to understand the era that we live in, and just briefly, we don't need to spend too much time on that, because I think a lot of people know about the fourth industrial revolution. I call it the smart technology era. Well, it's just a synonym for that, to make it a little more generic. It's not just industrial, it's affecting all disciplines. So I'll speak about that, but I'll also speak about AI as a key exponential technology. And then I'm going to start talking about AI-driven digital transformation. What does it mean? So we do these AI workshops with executives and managers, various enterprises, where we try and figure out the most important business use cases for them. Obviously, it's all linked to the business value drivers. And the interesting thing is, those value drivers might change as well, because they might be, because of the data that you've got. Data is the new oil or the new gold. Some people talking about that in that context. Provides you with the opportunity to unlock more value and create potential new revenue streams that you haven't even thought about. As a matter of fact, TransUnion was on a panel discussion with a guy from one of the, I think it's the COO from TransUnion, and they're trying to figure out all the other business cases and things that they can do with the data that they've got available. It's not just credit risk, there's other things as well. So, and I think other companies in financial services, you have to think about that as well, and think about partnerships and so forth. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about AI-driven digital transformation, and then I've got some interesting 2019 slides that I've extracted some material from MMC Ventures. They did a really good report, and I want to just show a little bit about AI adoption, and it actually touches on finance and insurance. And the interesting thing is, finance and insurance is kind of leading in certain respects. In terms of collecting the right data, it was quite interesting. At least that was the European perspective. So, and then I'll talk about some use cases and also some of the use cases that we do in Cortex Logic, which is my AI company. And maybe just brief background on what I'm doing. So I built my career on AI effectively. Didn't know it's going to become this big thing right now, but so I did my PhD in AI. I was at Stellenbosch University, and then started my first AI company, Season Systems, which did some work in the financial services sector, so like Sanlam and Liberty Life and all those kind of customers. But we've made a deliberate decision to actually focus on the industrial space, and it was a good decision at that time. And we worked at like Sasol and Richmond Minerals and Lonmin and BHP Billiton and Rio Tinto, those kind of companies. And the value drivers there is about throughput yield. And if you improve it with 1 or 2 or 3%, that translates to millions of dollars straight away. So we built these models of process optimization, and we've built predictive maintenance, those type of things, and there's a lot of value to unlock. But a lot of the lessons there is very applicable to other industries as well, because we've created end-to-end solutions, real-time solutions that integrate into the systems. And what happened now in the financial services sector, people are getting more instrumented. You've got social, you've got phones, you've got various ways of knowing more about your customers, their patterns and so forth. So you can actually have more real-time interaction and be predictive in a real-time sense and create end-to-end real-time smart solutions. So that is the opportunity. So I'll be talking about that. And then the last few points, this is actually very topical. I'm sure there will be interesting discussion points on that. Just talking about the man-machine intelligence continuum and talking about trustworthy AI. So the European Union has just released the ethics report, which is, I think, very important, and all AI implementers should embrace that, and companies need to look at that, because they talk about foundations, the key requirements, and how do you actually operationalize it, and how do you bring it into AI solutions. And then some comments on jobs and future of AI, and then also a little bit, if there's time, improving the state of the art in AI. But I'll keep it focused. I'll remember this is finance, AI and finance, so let's move on to the next slide. So my personal massive transformative purpose in business and even a non-profit, I also founded, I've actually stopped my background there, but I sold that company, Season Systems, to General Electric in 2011, worked at GE, learned a lot there as big data analytics leader and how they approach things. I also joined a company called Jumo that's in the financial space. So they created the next generation mobile money marketplace. Who knows Jumo? Okay, there's a few. They're an interesting company. They recently got $50 million funding from Goldman Sachs as well, and they are one of the big, probably the top funded African company that I've seen so far. So, and they're expanding into Southeast Asia, and they're doing stuff in Pakistan and so forth. The reason I mentioned that, there's some interesting examples and lessons for finance right there, because that's a disruptor. Without having access to any credit risk, any credit history or anything, you actually build, what we've done there is to build up history over time with using, obviously looking at the wallet behavior as people pay back loans, microloans for instance, but also utilizing the call direct records. And then that way you can, in a dynamic way, build that up. And you can build credit risk and affordability models based on that, which is interesting. So I'll touch on that as well. But so I worked there, and then after that founded Cortex Logic, which is a next generation AI company. We're trying to be the AI company on the African continent that can compete internationally. And almost like in the footsteps of C-Sense, because we've actually did a global thing there as well. And then I also founded the Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa, which we call MIIA, which is a non-profit organization, and the aim is really help transform Africa through data science and smart technology. Obviously there's other things as well, but obviously we just want to make a contribution in that regard. And all of that goes into helping to shape a better future, helping businesses thrive, etc. Okay, so the fourth industrial revolution, I call it the smart technology era. If this thing works, I can always just use that. Quick definitions there. In a nutshell, what we see now is obviously building on the digital revolution, but we see the fusion of exponential technologies. That's blurring the lines between the physical, the biological, digital worlds, effectively. If you think about biotech, nanotech, artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT, all these technologies. By the way, I see this thing is cut off a bit there, but anyway, that's okay. So what's happening here is, it's actually a very interesting time because we are fundamentally altering the way we live, work, and relate to one another. So I was just in a discussion talking about philosophy and all sorts of things, and ethics and so forth. But I think, and we were actually discussing this point around becoming potentially more human-centric, think more about technology. We almost had to adapt to technology. There's a mouse, there's keyboards, and all sorts of stuff. With AI, we've got the opportunity to interact more naturally with the world, with systems, because we instrument the world better. So now it becomes very important that we understand what we want to, what does it mean to be human, and what does it mean to create something of value and great meaning and all of that. And there's no time to waste in terms of this, because technology is driving very fast forward, and it's sitting on an exponential curve around this as well. So the next few slides, I'm actually showing, so maybe before I get to that exponential curve slide, this is just showing the past revolutions that we went through. The first was using water and steam to mechanize production. Next is electric power to create mass production. Then using electronics and IT to automate production. So I just framed it all in production, but you can see the pattern there. And the fourth industrial revolution is really, if you think about production, it's about smart production. Because if you instrument the world better, you can create smart systems, and everything's becoming smart, intelligent. Buildings, if we can create more sensors here and controls, you can get a building that's more intelligent. We see it already with cars, with Tesla, it's like a computer on wheels. And the question is, because of all the data and stuff, how will it evolve? It's almost like a human with lots of sensors, and it's doing things and thinking and trying to do things. So it's obviously still doesn't have a world view or anything like that. Very narrow application of AI, but it gives us a sense of where things can go as well. So the next slide, I think this thing, oops, there we go. Yeah. So this is some comments from the World Economic Forum, and I'm just going to share one or two. The first guy from Cisco was just saying, we cannot wait until there are massive dislocations in our society to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution. And Klaus Schwab was saying, in the new world, it's not the big fish which eats the small fish, it's the fast fish which eats the slow fish. And that's so true. If you think about the incumbents, the companies that you're involved in, literally in 5 years' time, the landscape can look vastly different. And that's because of the fast change, the fast pace of change around these things. Now, competitors are actually utilizing data and applying smarts to that. And you might get competition from angles or from companies that you don't expect it from as well. So anyway, we know that. So my last slide on the smart technology era. This is the exponential curve that I'm talking about, and that bottom left block there, the bottom there, is actually showing some specific exponential technologies, of which artificial intelligence is one. And what we're talking about is a fusion of those technologies, and you can create all these wonderful applications that can be very disruptive and utilized to solve problems. So I'm going to quick jump a few slides. So this is a slide from Softbank. I don't know who knows Softbank. They've got the world's biggest VC fund, Vision Fund, 100 billion. And when they invest in companies right now, they invest only in AI-driven companies. And what this slide is showing, if you look at the bottom there, on the y-axis we've got business value, or value that's unlocking. On the x-axis we've got time. And as a start, as Homo sapiens, we've unlocked value, if you think from a business perspective, with agriculture, fishery, metals, minerals, etc. And then after that, we created a lot of value. Obviously, you can see exponential. There was an exponential curve there for industrial and financial value. And then, since 1995, you can see where internet just came to the fore. It's absolutely sitting on an exponential curve, and that's obviously still increasing. But the way the vision, the way Softbank is looking at this is seeing even a stronger exponential curve, and where you can see the major impact, and they talk about the AI era. So this is the area. Now, I think this is pretty much accurate. Obviously, there's a lot of other technologies coming into play, but this is going to be the most impactful exponential technology. And it's going to leverage the rest. Now, I think one needs to look at this in relation to one another as well. So you're going to still unlock value from agriculture, fishery, metals, industrial, financial. It is just that you can unlock more value utilizing the internet and AI specifically in relation to that. And these are just comments, maybe I'm just going to highlight one. Google CEO Sundar Pichai was just saying we will move from a mobile world to an AI first world, so we see that. I'm sure the last 2 days you've been given introductions to AI, so I'm not going to go into, I probably don't need to give definitions here, maybe just in case people haven't seen this. So what is AI? There's many definitions for that, but a simple one is it is a branch of computer science, but there's other disciplines coming into play. There's obviously statistics and applied math and many others as well. But it started with computer science, and it's really focusing on developing machines and software with intelligence. And I think the key technology within, if you look at the AI tool stack, and from a company perspective, we look at this whole tool stack, and we're trying to utilize the right tools to solve the right problems and combining solutions. Even if you think about what DeepMind, which is part of Google, did, it's an engineered solution where they use deep reinforcement learning and Monte Carlo search. And Monte Carlo search is like good old-fashioned AI, it's like computer science, and combine that with a neural network or AI technology, deep reinforcement learning. And if you create the right infrastructure and architectures, and you combine the architectures and algorithms in a solution, you can engineer an incredible solution that goes beyond superhuman performance. It comes up with strategies that we as humans haven't even thought about. If you look at a game of Go, for instance. But I think the real breakthrough was in the 2010s up, where with deep learning, which is a subset of machine learning, so it's also machine learning. Machine learning is basically data-driven systems that learn from data. But deep learning is just building on that, and you're creating just a stack of these machines. So you actually you're modeling higher level abstractions, and that's exactly what's actually happening in the brain. If you think about your vision system, your auditory system, you're creating these multiple layers of abstraction, and until you actually get to very abstract and very interesting classifications that you can make on the higher end, like we can do as humans all the time. So it's definitely utilizing some of that. Okay, so let's get into, no, I think this thing is not working properly. I'm going to use this. Okay, so why deep learning? I think that the other big thing is that I want to say about deep learning is we've got obviously IoT that's generating a lot of sensor data, but we always had in plants, industrial world, sensor data. But specifically with phones, you've got, and social media and the internet, we've got tremendous amount of data where people are being instrumented. And big tech companies and other companies with apps know a lot more about their customers, the behavior, all of those type of things. So this data is being generated at an exponential rate. But the other thing is there's not only that, it is text data, video data, audio data that's becoming available. And with deep learning, it's a perfect technology that you can apply to unstructured data, video, audio, text as well. So, and you don't need to do feature engineering. It actually works off raw pixels or off audio signals, all of that. And the other key thing is with the traditional machine learning, we actually ran into limits where it doesn't matter if you throw more data at the problem, it doesn't do better. With deep learning, it's the other way. The more data, you can actually improve the system. You improve the system all the time. So it made a huge difference there. So the recipe is really, you've got this structured to unstructured data. Obviously, you want rapid access to all available data. We've got compute, no more excuses. There's even very specific dedicated hardware that helps to train systems faster. You've got, for instance, Google that's using TensorFlow. They've got TPUs. They're creating their own processing units. You've got NVIDIA doing some great stuff as well. There's a bunch of companies that's really investing significantly in that space. And then you've got vast improvements to the algorithms. as well, and tweaks, and you've got more money in there, and more talent is coming in there. So the research has been fast-tracked as well. So it's almost like a perfect storm. So this thing will just get better and better. And this is just deep learning. We'll get some other very important tools in that toolbox as well that can do planning and reasoning and other things as well in a better way. Okay, now back to more business. So, sorry, just before I do that, this is showing this was done with Bloomberg Beta 2015, and after that they've created a few AI or machine intelligence landscapes. And the point here is just, well, you can see all these tech players and startups at that time, and it was actually just increasing like threefold every year. You see that some companies focusing on core technologies, but these companies focusing on rethinking enterprise. We think about enterprise, financial services, for instance. You think about sales, recruitment, you look at fraud detection, marketing, the various, everywhere there's applications for AI, effectively. Various forms of AI. If you think about industries, ad tech, agriculture, education, etc., there's companies just focusing on solutions for that as well. And then the other big area of AI is not just mining the data, building models in the data, but it's also on the human-computer interface. So obviously with deep learning specifically, we've created now the opportunity to create much more natural interactions, and the systems are getting really better now. I would say you see every year, you see the improvements. Dramatic improvements in that regard. Okay, so that was enough there. This was interesting. This is actually from an MMC Ventures report 2019, and the interesting thing was they were looking at AI startups in Europe, and a lot of focus in two industries, health and well-being and finance. And there's also media and retail and so forth, but you can see those two are getting quite a bit of focus from AI startups. And then what was interesting, if you think about the application areas, then marketing and customer services was really up there. So, and I think the technology is ripe for the picking. It's ripe to actually apply to these kind of applications right now. Targeted sales and marketing, you can do much better customer services. There's breakthrough solutions within call centers. We've got machine learning that's listening to digital recordings. We're working with, say, PwC, where they want to do fraud risk assessment on calls, and instead of people, clerks, tediously trying to figure out things, we've got machine learning just listening to that, extracting information. You can do sentiment analysis, looking at tone, all sorts of various things. We are applying AI to emails automatically, so machine learning based systems that figuring out the intent, doing auto replies, doing OCR, all sorts of things as well. So you can scan your attachments and documents and react and act on that. And then you can send the exceptions to humans to handle as well. So you can handle a lot more, become a lot more efficient. So there's many, many examples of that as well. So this slide is just, I always like to start, when you think about AI-driven digital transformation, think about the value drivers of businesses. And this is kind of a summary across multiple industries, and I think if you think about just your productivity, increasing your revenue, reducing risk, lowering costs, that's relevant to pretty much most businesses. But obviously, in each bucket, there's different things. So if you think about minerals, metals, mining, then increasing throughput and yield and quality is important. But if you think about customer-facing businesses, you want to do cross-selling, upselling, on-demand personalized recommendations. You want to be like Amazon and Netflix for your business. And it's absolutely possible to do that. Do what people are doing in retail or companies, but you can apply to other industries as well. But there's many, many applications there. The other point here in the middle is creating strategic value. So with that data, you can create new revenue models and all sorts of things. And I think for customer-facing businesses, enhancing the customer experience and also targeted sales and marketing is a huge application. Area of application as well. But this systems needs to be fed by a 360-degree view, if you can create that, of your customer. Then you can be really personalized if you've got that right. So it needs to be driven, it needs to have context as well. But you can apply AI on the human-computer interface side, virtual assistants, robo-advisors, but you can also need to have the data science done properly on all available structured and unstructured data, so you can feed these systems with this. So that's what that is about. And this was also interesting, just to add on to that point. And by the way, we can stop at some point because I see it's not really interactive, and there's no hands up yet. And but anyway, so if you look at AI offers innovation, efficacy, velocity, scalability. This is some examples, and I'll make the slides available afterwards as well. So if you go actually to machineintelligenceafrica.org, the events page, we're making all these presentations, at least the ones that I'm giving, we're making that available. And even if there's videos taken, we make videos available as well on YouTube. Anyway, so innovation, you can see you can create new products and services, voice control devices, autonomous vehicles, we see that's happening. But efficacy, performing tasks more effectively with fraud detection, customer segmentation. You can see there's various examples where you can create benefit from AI. So, before I get to AI adoption, look at that. Okay, so let's see, my slide's not completed, but it's probably that projector. So, 5 things. The Industrial Data Corporation, don't worry too much. Okay. The Industrial Data Corporation has got, they've got a big data analytics maturity framework that I've been using at General Electric and other places as well. And there's 5 elements in successful AI transformations. And it always starts with the intent, the strategy, sources of value. So the use cases, that's why we always start there. But then you've got data, technology, process, and people that are also a very important part of this. So when you implement quick win solutions, always think about those kind of things. What is the impact on the people, on the processes? How to use the technology? How to use your data? What data is available? Do I have rapid access to all available data? If I, for instance, have intelligent virtual assistants, for instance, that's interacting with customers, that is actually like a sensor because it provides this interaction with the customer. That's very valuable. That information needs to go back to your data lake. That information can improve your predictive models as well. So you can create a closed loop type of solution there. And if you want to fast track things, this graph at the bottom here is just mapping those 5 things to on this curve, and it's just showing how you can actually move it back. So that means that you can accelerate value creation as well. And I'm not going to go into detail here, but this is quite valuable, this slide, just unpacking those 5 things that we just talked about. What are the specific things that you do? So with data, for instance, breaking down the data silos, decide on the level of aggregation and pre-analysis, identify high value data, the quality of the data, all of those type of things. Data privacy, you need to think about so many things these days, but yeah. And then finally, you can create this radar chart where you can say, I'm looking at things from an ad hoc to an optimized state. So if I look at all 5, the intent, strategy, technology, people, data, process, you can measure exactly where you are. And I've done this with other companies as well, where you can see, am I still in an ad hoc state, or have I moved to an opportunistic state, or repeatable state, or managed state, or am I in an optimized state? And there's really few companies that's got any of these in an optimized state, where you've got continuous improvement, systems just working seamlessly. So we've got plenty to do to actually to become really mature from an AI and a big data analytics perspective. I'm going to skip some of the slides here. So core AI use cases per sector. So this is interesting. This is also from the MMC Ventures 2019 report. And now, since we're talking about finance as well, so I'll give some finance examples as well. But if you think about asset management, first one listed there, some of the core use cases, and we think about trading and all of those kind of things as well. And we also are in trading. We've got a state-of-the-art AI-based trading solution, and we're working on an AI hedge fund and things like that as well. But investment strategy, portfolio construction, risk management, client service, all examples of really good areas of AI applications and use cases. I'm going to skip a few there. If you look at insurance, risk assessment, claims processing, fraud detection, customer service. Lovely examples, and I'm actually going to talk about some of the things that we've done. Okay, I'm going to skip the healthcare stuff. Interestingly here, this was a few years 2 years ago, but I've got a more recent one as well. But this was the sector of leading AI adoption. It was interesting that financial services and high tech and telecoms, and then financial services were really right there. And I think you all know how much, to what extent are you applying AI. So some of the others are really behind from that perspective. But this is 2019 AI adoption information that was derived. And it was interesting. Obviously, the AI adoption is uneven across within sectors. But you can see insurance got 48% of respondents that have deployed AI or plan to do that. Okay, I must say it's not just implemented or plan to do within the next 12 months. But you can see insurance came out on top. Let me just see if there's any financial services, though, were only 37%, so way down. But yeah, so that gives you an idea. So it looks like insurance is leading it from that perspective. And it was interesting, this is just time spent processing and collecting data. So that's a good starting point to have available, to make sure that you've got access to all available data, structured and unstructured data. And it's not only your own data. You need to think about enriching your data with, there's Twitter, there's social media, there's geospatial information. There's so much information available. So one needs to think out of the box and say, how do we utilize that information as well? If you know where your clients are, then you can get more this public information available. Anyway, so that gives you an idea of that. And this is just showing some of the enterprise plans to deploy. So only 14% have already deployed, the rest haven't. A lot of plans to do that. And this is just talking about some of the new possibilities. And if I just quickly, this is interesting now as well, because the last slides, if I get to that, is talking about some of the things like reasoning and planning and all of that. So you can see knowledge, reasoning, planning, communication, perception. So obviously with audio, video, there's a significant progress in that regard. So we've got AI vision, AI audio systems that can do fantastic stuff. That's just because of the technology and the data that's available. But it's showing some of the use cases in that regard as well. Even with reasoning, you get legal analysis, asset management, application processing. Obviously we see this in games already, especially what AlphaGo and OpenAI and some of these companies are doing to advance the state of the art in AI. Some fantastic solutions being created. So if you think about insurance or financial services, this is a slide. I'm saying AI for improved customer engagement, but it's more generic than that. So if you think about carefully about what you can do with these smart technologies in financial services and insurance and so forth, then the enhanced service, first of all, could be personalized customer experience, and obviously the value is redefining the value proposition. The next one is you can get digital advice, and you're redefining the whole distribution. You can do automated and augmented customer services, and you can enhance efficiencies. And then you can reduce the processing time and cost with onboarding robo-claims adjusters and so forth. And the bottom here is just showing some of the AI technology that can be utilized in these kind of applications. And if you think about AI applied to customer service, it's like an iceberg. So the pre-purchase, there's web, mobile, promotions, various things you can do. But post-purchase, there's a ton of stuff that one can do. Many, many, many things. Obviously, you're engaging more with the customer, hopefully, and you do something with the data that you've got available. Obviously, you can look at it pre-sales, onboarding, post-sales, effectively. Let's skip some of this. Skip. Okay, so some of the AI applications in use, this is 2019 applications. The interesting one, so people are trying with chatbots. What we find, we definitely find it. We've got a solution, AI Assist, but we also have AI Email and AI Autodoc that actually looks at text documents and doing automatic processing and understanding that as well. But anyway, so you can see chatbots, process optimization, fraud analysis. Fraud is a big thing. How much time do we have? Lots. Okay, good. Well,
standing up to
get some questions and stuff.
Because guys, you're letting me down. I posted to Dr. Ludik that I had the best audience and they're interactive and they are so cool.
I don't know what.
And now you're making me a liar. Come on, guys. Some nice, interesting questions.
Yeah, is there anything on AI applications and things that you want to ask? I'm going to go through some application use cases after this. Then I'm going to get to some thorny, interesting things like trustworthy AI. I'll talk a little bit about jobs in AI and the future of AI. And I'm sure there's questions, there's some more generic things as well. But if this part of the discussion, if you want to maybe talk anything about some of your applications, of how you've applied it, or if you want some advice or anything like that, you're welcome. So I'm going to go through some use cases, but if there's questions, and maybe I want to just give you a time. Do you want to, someone want to ask at this point anything? Yet? Happy to go still? No. Okay, cool. So let's get to some interesting use cases. So I'm going to skip that. Oh, yeah, just before I get to that, this is also interesting. It is. Who is initiating? I've got questions now. Maybe I'm going to ask some questions as well. So, in your companies, you in financial services, who is initiating the AI-related projects? Who in business? From a roles perspective. What's that? Who are you?
Specifically in our environment is the digital transformation team.
Great. So that's exactly what's happening. It's interesting. We're working with, okay, I'm not going to know, it's a big financial services company, bank, and we were engaging with their digital transformation team. They've got even some AI people there, but what we do is we obviously have experience in terms of how to operationalize it end to end, and we add value to that. We complement the team. So digital transformation team, and the interesting thing is, maybe that's kind of represented by IT there, but the interesting shift here was, we also have discussions with the executive management as well. So we go to some of these big companies, and we engage. As a matter of fact, I recently, last year, had multiple AI workshops with not just the executive management, but the management teams of various divisions within a business, and then brainstorming AI use cases. And together, you come up with some very interesting stuff. So that's an interesting perspective. But you can see, because of I think people realize that there is low-hanging fruit to pick with customer services. You see it with AI startups. So that's why customer services also coming up there. Line of business leadership. This is what we also find. Finance. Does it come from a CFO? I think the CFO realizes that if I'm becoming AI data-driven, it can impact my finances in a dramatic way. So, but marketing, maybe the target sales and marketing. Human resources, plenty. I actually did a few talks on AI transforming HR. So that's a big topic on its own as well. Anyway, so this is, so Jolene, I was turning it around. I was asking our questions. Got one answer there. Okay, this is an interesting one as well. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Yes.
I think it gets almost a little bit frustrating sometimes because I mean, we have AI in the bank, but they sit in a centralized team, and we talked about it just before, like we log projects and nothing happens, and we don't really get feedback from that or whatever. So that centralized might not work that well. So maybe infiltrating it and letting business kind of run that kind of things. Cormay had a pretty good example in his place where he trains people and then they go out and then identify top projects for that. That was pretty interesting. So
no, I think that's exactly right. I find exactly the same kind of thing. But I think the problem is, we live in a world where companies, doesn't matter what the company is, the incumbent needs to move very quickly, and you want to be agile. So what we do as Cortex Logic, obviously we're agile. We've got all the right, like a SWAT team of data architects, data engineers, AI, machine learning, software developers, business analysts that can really look at the problem and complement the team there. But you almost need that type of thing within your own setup as well. So even you've got maybe digital transformation teams and so forth, but what I've seen is there's almost like a bureaucracy still. That is hampering business to move quickly, and there's no time to waste. So I sense that frustration.
So I think it's sitting there for 5 years that could have been
Exactly.
really not.
Losing out on business opportunities.
Jacques.
Yes, totally.
I noticed on the previous slide, right down at the bottom, the lowest one was charity, I think. What was the previous one before that?
What was that? This one?
No, it was also one of those. It was one.
Anyway, yeah, charity, yeah.
Where the sectors that it was applied. And I think most of us, one way or another, may be involved. I'm involved in a couple of charitable projects. Yes. And I was wondering maybe if you could think about what would a charity do with an AI system?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking, does it go and do you get data from all the poor people, for example, and try and find a better way to get food to them, as an example, or which is a little bit of a sort of white privilege type perspective, maybe, or do you find new ways to raise funds, or just some ideas if you've got any?
Yeah. So obviously, you with Uber and stuff is trying to be a game changer in that regard, but more generically, I think. As the world becomes more instrumented, I'm also thinking about sustainable. Sorry, I have to switch this off. Oh, this guy's waiting for me, but I'm still busy. Anyways, as the world gets more instrumented, what we find is that there's a lot of data. I was at the AI for Good Global Summit last year in Geneva, Switzerland as well, and they were talking about there's charity-related stuff, but there's things are obviously around healthcare and improvement. But they were talking about satellite imagery, for instance. When you look at the poor areas, what do you do with that data as well? So having access to that, for instance, and understanding water scarcity, or understanding climate in poor areas, rural areas. So there's data that's being made available by organizations where there's funding and stuff. So that's one piece. People, I'm just thinking the way what we did at Jumo as well, people just feature phones, not even smartphones in Africa, and just a bit of interaction gives you more information as well. So there's many ways, and it will become more and more so, where there will be access to data, and especially if we crowdsource things as well, and fund the crowdsourcing, etc., then we get access to that data, and we can do things with that. And then obviously this is where the MIIA comes in, because we're looking at non-profit, looking at charity-related things or sustainable development goals, and trying to say apply data scientists' minds and AI machine learning to specific use cases that's practical. So there's probably a big subject that needs to be unpacked more, but there needs to be more thinking that goes into that. But I think it starts with having access to available data, focusing on real outcomes, things that's really truly impactful, making a difference. I think the big thing is you want to upskill people. You want to create an equitable society. You want, for instance, education made available to everyone. Give everybody opportunities. So there needs to be stuff done in that front as well. So charity is very broad, but yeah. Okay, so I've got people waiting for me as well. So I'm going to go through a few more slides here. The last thing is, I think as companies still trying to think about how do we accelerate things, how do we go quicker, the question is always buy versus build of AI solutions. And the problem with build is, do you have the expertise? Even if you've got AI stuff, do you have all the people that can help that? So I think this is where AI partners come in to help accelerate that, at least, because there's no time to waste. There needs to be an urgency around that. I can sense the frustration as well. So this slide is just showing a little bit of that, and you can see there's a lot of companies getting more into the buying as well, especially if it's kind of custom kind of solutions that works in insurance or short-term insurance, and it's providing a tangible solution, not a generic thing as well. So I'm going to skip a few of these things. This is more on data scientists. Okay, so quickly, maybe just what we do. This is just another way of looking at AI application. I'm going to show a few examples, and then I'm going to go to the last part of the presentation that talks more about the future and where things are going. But the way I'm looking at things, I'm realizing there's many things that we can do. How do we categorize the solutions that we provide? So the way we're looking at things is say, if you think about Engage, and it's all about helping people and businesses working smarter at scale. So if you can do that, if you can work smarter at scale, it's surely going to be impactful on multiple levels. So that's the first thing. And for that, we've got Engage, and we've got things like AI Assist, AI Email, AI Search, and there's a few things there. But I think on-demand personalized services, if you think about targeted sales and marketing, better customer experience, personalization is key. This is what Amazon is getting right, Netflix, those type of companies. So there, AI churn, AI risk, AI price, dynamic pricing. We're working with the banking in the banking industry on something that's interesting, where you can have dynamic pricing for home loans, or vehicle insurance, or credit cards, short-term insurance. Who's doing that really well in a personalized way, utilizing unstructured data, utilizing transactional data, using market conditions? What is your competitors doing as well? You can create those models. Simulate's got more of a world view and create more personalized, machine learning driven system, more dynamic pricing. This is where the future of financial services are going. So those are things. Recommendations, insights, debt collection. But then there's other things as well. We do optimization and real-time causal analysis, anomaly detection, fraud, those things as well. And I think the other one that's very interesting is audio, video, and so forth, geo, etc. And I'm going to be very quick, but this is some examples. Churning in insurance industry, you can see savings between 100 and 120 million per annum, just in terms of churn. Where in this case it was a 40% cancellation rate of policies issued within 90 days after the sale, and looking then at email correspondence, voice recordings, text interactions, demographics. Utilizing that information, you can actually create models to pick up on customer behavior in this regard. How much?
No.
Okay, cool. This is an example of funeral policy. If you think about funeral policies, creating predictive models, very accurate models that predict the propensity to churn or not do payment, based on payment transactions and more information about what you do. And you can create insights there. You can create what is the average probability to lapse by planned brand, for instance, or you can look at demographics. You can do various things, premiums that's being paid, and so forth. Fraud detection, another big one. There's an example of 70 million rand worth of fraud and abuse. And then I mentioned the AI-based email processing. This is actually an insurance customer that we recently did this for. They currently manually process more than 5,000 emails daily, and that more than 40 people utilizing it in a very tedious way. So this, again, an example of where you can apply machine learning as well. Okay, intelligent virtual assistants, risk scoring, dynamic pricing, I've mentioned this before, smart recommendations. Okay, now in the last part of the presentation. So, any questions at this point? More? Okay. So this is more looking at the world, future, where things are moving with AI, and I think one needs to think carefully about these kind of things. So this is, if you think where we are right now, we're on a journey from assisted to autonomous intelligence on this man-machine intelligence continuum. And we need to think as humans carefully, how do we want to utilize these AI and these machines to serve us, to help us have more productive lives, to have to support us, and we need to think carefully what it means. Now, I think this is actually indication, this was done with PwC, this is an indication of market size. So you can see the first area is assisted intelligence, where it's just assisting humans. Then you get augmented intelligence, where it's actually augmenting and helping with decision making, for instance. And then you do get autonomous intelligence, like you do get with, say, self-driving cars, or 24/7 trading, investment. There's machines going and making the trades as well. So this is real stuff that's happening. So and this slide maps to those three things, but you can see with augmented intelligence examples of business strategy analysis using machine learning, smart clinical decision support, autonomous intelligence like autonomous vehicles, smart investment, for instance. And this was an interesting one that builds on that. So you can see. So you probably can't read it from at the back there, but I'll quickly describe. So this is showing the 4 quadrants of man-machine intelligence continuum. The 3 things that I've already mentioned: assisted intelligence, augmented, and autonomous is positioned there. But then automation has been added here as well. So on the Y-axis, we've got adaptive systems. Well, first of all, at the bottom, and the top, we've got hardware or very specific systems. The first column is human in the loop. The second column is no humans in the loop. So obviously this is where autonomous things come into play. Now, autonomous intelligence can be adaptive. So, yes, okay, so I need to finish off here. But anyway, so this is the way you can look at the applications of AI. So I want to end with this. I'm going to skip the trustworthy AI, actually something cool. So final, I've got 2 minutes. So I would recommend, if you're interested in AI and the future and where things are going, there was a book written by Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. He's AI guy like me. He did his PhD in AI, but he worked in Silicon Valley initially at Apple and Google, and then went to drive Google in China. And obviously that didn't work out well. But he started Innovation Ventures and stuff. But he's got a very good perspective of what's happening in China and what's happening in North America.
What's the name of the book?
It's AI Superpowers, Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. Now what's interesting there, and then what I'm going to refer, he actually did a TED Talk. You can Google the TED Talk. But he was talking about, if you think about jobs, and you can, if you look at the next 5 years, tasks within jobs that are repetitive, you can be sure that AI will pretty much take that over. So one needs to obviously adapt the role, your task, your jobs. Routine things will be taken over in 10 years and optimizing in 15 years. And then obviously if it's complex and creative, that's still pretty safe. In terms of the jobs, the way we define it. But you know, you can position jobs on the x-axis like this, where you've got repetitive, routine, optimizing, complex, creative. And you can see like truck driver and security guard is routine. If you think about radiologist, don't go into radiology, because you've got deep learning, machine learning that's giving you superhuman performance on that as well. So that's optimizing. But what Kai-Fu Lee did, what I really like, is saying, what does society 5.0 look like? How do we create how do we value jobs that's more human-centric and more compassionate as well? So he was adding a vertical axis where the bottom is showing compassion not needed, the top is showing compassion needed. And then you can reposition the jobs there, and you can create more jobs, and you can start valuing that. I don't think we value always the human-centric, compassion-related jobs enough. But now if you look at this and you say, where does AI fit? So in this bottom left quadrant, where compassion is not needed and where things can be optimized, you get repetitiveness and routine, AI is going to take that over. So, and there's some tedious stuff there as well, so that's not a problem. When you move this way to creativity and strategy, you will see more human plus AI. If you go above the line, and this is where we should position more of our jobs, you see the warm embrace of humans utilizing AI as a tool, and you still have the compassion and all of that, human-centricness. And then finally, when you get to the top right quadrant, compassion needed, but also creativity and strategy and stuff, which is really a human domain. So I'm going to end there, but this is the kind of world where we can have more jobs that's more useful for us. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think let's kick off. We're going to go straight into the panel. Dr. Ludik is part of the panel, so if I can just have the panelists, please.
I spoke there, they gave me the AI leader, but that was just like really? I was there first time. The first time I never had a field. Hold on. I'm 20 people at work. I'm disappointed to see how the project but there's a lot of work to do. Yeah, I do. Okay. How long is this?
I think let's get started so long.
Should I remove it?
Yeah, we're just waiting. Bernard's just taken a body break. Yeah, you can join us as well, please.
Yes, I'm going to actually make
All made up of two words.
Good sentences.
Okay, I think let's kick off. Bernard can join us when he gets back. So, guys, again, please, interactive session. I've got questions that I have to ask, so I'll kick off with those. Oh, there you are. Cool, so I'm going to kick off to the panel. We need one more chair, please, Michael. Okay, so the first question is, what is the current state of utilization of machine learning in finance based on your experience and interaction with the industry? What is the current adoption rate, I guess is a better question.
Can I start with you? Want someone else?
Okay, I'll take this because I have it. I come across it. I'd say there's probably enough, but not more than enough. But I'll answer it differently. So the category of where the effort is not really in the hard-hitting, life-changing implementations. It's imagine when mobile apps came out, more people started doing games than actual business solutions. I think we're still playing games.
Machine learning and finance.
Thanks. I don't work in finance. I've worked with a couple of financial institutions, and it does seem as if they are ramping up the internal capability. It also does seem as if there's some friction, some difficulties that they encounter in changing how they operate.
I've got it.
I've also worked in the financial industry. I think what I realized is that a lot of the things that have AI in it is mostly reactive instead of being proactive, where customers complain about something and they're trying to solve that problem instead of actually coming up with an innovative idea that would make things better. That's what I've actually noticed within the financial industry.
And yesterday we touched on that with AI, where sometimes we only know about the problem when there is a problem.
And also sometimes when your competitor releases something that is really great and now you're trying to catch up with them and you come up with something that's quite similar to what they're doing.
Yeah, so if you think about, Janine, you need to unpack it. If you think about, say, credit risk, what I've seen so far is logistic regression, which is not a pure machine learning, it's just more statistical kind of approach being used as, if you think about champion challenger, I think there's opportunity to utilize more machine learning based systems. So always the danger is it black box systems? Because explainability is very important. But I think there's various things that one can do, and I've got actually very specific things that we are discussing with banks and in the financial services sector around, for instance, much better machine learning driven segmentation. And then you can create more focused models on these segmentations, for instance. So it's a combination of unsupervised learning plus supervised learning. You can still use logistic regression, but you can start challenging that as well. So I think there are ways to extract information from machine learning based models as well. So adoption, I think in general, credit risk, the slow adoption for machine learning based approaches, great opportunity to make improvements on that front. But there's many other things. So fraud detection, you've got machine learning based solution. If you think about churn prediction.
Locally?
Yeah, locally. No, absolutely. The examples that I've showed, some of them, I was very quick through some of them, but churn, AI churn. Churn is an example, but we're working on dynamic pricing, which is unsupervised machine learning based. Also utilizing unstructured data. So, and you can create features from that as well. So it's a combination of things. So yeah, so I definitely see that happening. On the trading, if it's more on the investment side, we've got a combination of very advanced mathematics and physics with AI, where we're creating trading solutions, looking at stocks, equities, commodities, forex, those type of things.
That's actually becoming quite pervasive.
Yes.
I have a friend of mine
Yes.
made 200,000 a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, how did you do that? You know nothing about trading.
Well, they're using systems that can do these kind of things as well. Maybe they're lucky, but we've got systems that very incredible potential return. So there's a lot of value to unlock there as well.
Guys, there's our side hustle. We can all become, what do you call it, traders.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Any questions from the floor?
Thank you.
Finally, Clifford. After 2 days.
Yes, we might be quite excited.
I've been waiting a while, so I'll hang on to this.
This is going to be the question. Just joking.
Well, I hope so. In terms of AI, specifically deep learning and finance, what's the biggest flaw of the deep learning models available generally in the market?
What is the biggest?
Flaw.
Okay,
So we know it's fast, it can recognize your face in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
But what's the flaw of AI when it comes to finance?
Well, it's a broad. We'd love to hear what you guys also think.
Yes.
So I think you know that even with vision systems, where you're looking at a picture, it looks like this, but this thing should recognize it, and there's fine-tuned maybe noise that you add to this thing, suddenly it doesn't recognize it properly. So, and the problem with deep learning is also the good thing about deep learning. You don't need to create those features like traditional machine learning. You have to create the features, and there's a lot of understanding, there's a lot of engineering that happens there. With deep learning, you actually work typically off raw signals. Now, if you do apply it to customer data, you're still going to work with that data. It is just typically you've got with deep learning, say it's you work with video pixels or you work with audio signals, and it will create features. So that's the beauty of deep learning type of approaches. So what's the flaw? The flaw is, am I sure about the features that's being created? And the uncertainty, can it explain those features? And there's a lot of stuff on probabilistic type of deep learning models where you can get more statistical information around this, and you can extract information from there, but there's some research that needs to be done there. Yeah, so I think it's horses for courses. The interesting thing is they're using deep learning for an autonomous vehicle, so I can tell, and they're using it for Google Translate, all those kind of things. So there's so many applications where it's really implemented, and people are driving their cars and trusting systems based on deep learning, and they're making it robust. They're trying to cover the edge cases by giving it more and more data. And I'm thinking about, say, Boeing 737 MAX. Well, the problem there, that is a faulty sensor that's feeding into the stabilization system. So they haven't been robust in terms of what happens if I can't trust the sensor as well. So what we did in in other industries, we're creating soft sensors where you can pick up drift in a sensor. So you have backup for sensors that's software defined. And you can put lots of checks and balances, but you've got to be, Anyway, the flaws, there's an example of flaws, but yeah.
I think just to add on that, is the data or the usage of historical data, repetitive use of historical data, based on the Airbus, right? Suddenly we have new data point that the sensors fail. Before then, we only have that historical data that you can only learn, and the first that it only look at it that way. Now that you have a new thing, it actually causes a deviation, which is, for me, is the data actually that's the risk in all the model.
So I would agree. It is explainability of the model that seems to be a big concern. Once you've trained this model and it starts making predictions, how do you explain what it's doing? Because someone that's looking at these results will probably want some explanation of your credit score or whether the loan was granted or not. And then definitely as well, privacy concerns. So once you've trained this big model, how much PII is in there? Can you give this model to someone without actually giving them all of your training data as well? So I would say that those are two flaws that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, we've heard these two days. We've heard about upskilling people who were in traditional manual positions, and My question is it realistic with your background and your background to think that it's even possible to upskill a person who's doing a manual, repetitive task to actually be able to perform an expert position in an AI robotics world after 6 months or a year of some kind of training, that nobody is certain of what that training should be at the moment?
Yeah, so I think we need to, Hans is right. So one needs to, you probably have, so let me just quickly answer on that. And I think there's a lot more roles. This is more back to my other slide I've created, where we need to create more human-centric, compassionate, other types of roles that we need to value. So we need to think about, it's almost like re-engineering of the economy. There's Ray Dalio, he's, I don't know if you know Bridgewater Associates, financial services, maybe biggest hedge fund in the world, $150 billion. But he's right now on YouTube and he's on American TV talking about the coming revolution. And he's actually speaking to, because people are losing jobs or they're worried about they're going backwards from an income perspective, and it's almost like wealth are more created in fewer hands, and that's stuff that we need to readdress. So and one of the solutions is thinking about the economy. How do we redefining it, reorganizing it? And it's almost like thinking about society 5.0, what it looks like. And this book, the Kafaluda that I talked about, he's talking about not universal basic income, but he's talking about things like social responsibility stipends, for instance, where you reward people based on their positive contribution to a better society and creating value there. So I don't think all the work needs to be AI and using all of this. Well, you need a few people that create those type of things, but you create the wealth and then you utilize the wealth to actually shape a better society and economy, and you create a lot of other jobs. That's more human-centric.
Okay, I agree with that, but your answer is no, it's not possible to change it.
I don't think it's possible, I agree with you, I don't think it's possible to, maybe some. Well, I was just in a panel discussion where a guy, well, he's a white, they call Waididi, they're taking... Waididi. Do you know Waididi?
No, hence I asked.
Well, and he's here, but in literally 3 months, within a week, they trained people to actually create their own website, do AdSense, do a bunch of stuff, without any digital background or skills.
Yes.
So all I'm saying is there's examples, it doesn't need to be AI and all of it. AI can actually help with a lot of these things. So let's just toolbox.
Yeah, so reskill in a different area, basically, not in the AI area specifically.
Yes.
Because that's a very expert. And then I'll have the mic back.
You're not going to leave the mic. Small business, for example, I don't know much about, how to do websites and all of that. But I opened up a bank account. I started a business. I got the website up and running. I don't know any of that, so it does open up opportunities. I'm still not skilled, but I can do stuff. The other thing is with cost marginality.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Yeah.
How much will you need to survive, and will you need to work in the future? Will you actually need?
Yeah, because let's go back to meaning now, and it goes back to, that's why I'm saying we need to think about what society should look like in the future.
Who decides though?
No, this is where we need wisdom. We need a lot of people with wisdom
central
coming together.
governance for such, right? So how do you?
Yeah, but I love decentralized systems as well. So and
to answer your question, there's an NLG, right? Natural language generation. That's taking work for the journalists. It's actually writing articles. And that's something that's the latest thing. It actually, you give it data, it goes through it, it assesses it, interprets and writes and functions whatever.
So I don't have to pay a PR person anymore.
No. This is where it is. So how do you repurpose a journalist? Do you look for sentiment? Because the machine won't have emotions, right?
Oh.
It's now editorial, whatever else, which is now you're already encroaching on something else. And I'm not a journalist.
Okay, thanks. And then that last slide from Dr. Ludik, where he said the CEO is a compassionate job. That's not true.
You need CEOs, and I'm a CEO, I'm compassionate, but I agree with you.
It's strategy and compassion, it's not only compassion.
Yeah, there's a few. So listen, that was done, that slide, and I haven't create my own, I maybe modified things there as well, but it was actually originally from Dr. Jacques Ludik. This is the way he positioned things as well. But you're right, but maybe it should be.
Which brings me to the very last question, and that is about compassion. Sorry, this is last. Compassion.
I have to run after this, by the way, because
are there at the moment any kind of research being done on allowing AI to become more compassionate or to have emotional stability?
So definitely yes, and to know what?
And because it's exponential, so I believe it will be possible to teach the computer or the machine learning at the background some compassion, but are there current research at the university level?
Yes, absolutely.
There's a risk not creating the same thing. If you have a credit approver, usually it goes to your credit manager type of thing who overrides whenever the score is given based on that gut intuition, which is applying emotion. And we try to remove that because that's how you get a better portfolio. Just double touching.
Yeah. Just quickly in terms of your question,
because that's the first one.
That is true. There's definitely research. If you think about vision systems, where you can look at a person's face and you can detect how they feel effectively based on that, and it's very, very refined in terms of tone, all of that. So it's very rudimentary, but it's going to get much better, much better. If you've got more information about behavioral things, you just monitor. You've got the world more instrumented. You will get systems that just train on this, and this could be helpful for us as well, but it's also dangerous if you don't do it right. My big concern there is digital dictatorship. And it's already difficult to get, if you think about Putin, you get these kind of leaders, it's difficult to remove some of the people, but if you've got digital dictatorship, how do you remove that type of thing where you control? So China's got an interesting challenge ahead. Well, they're trying to balance things, but so I would hate a world like that where it's almost like controlling the minds, the thoughts and emotions, but there's already a lot of manipulation that's happening with advertising, going and really looking at people's emotions. So very clever scientific stuff done, and you can use machine learning to figure things out and then personalize it. I've got the right message for you, and I know all the trigger points.
But adding on to what you just said, I still.
Thank you.
We're waiting for our next question.
Adding on to what you were just talking about, compassion, I still do feel that within finance, compassion should still be applied in some situations. So I do have counter argument to what you just said.